The vision-hunting vessel Crimson Fang was a ship built for war. Its hull was black like the void between stars, and its weapons could burn holes through moons. The crew were predators from a world where only the strong survived. They had scales like obsidian stone, 4 amber eyes that could see in complete darkness, and claws that could tear through metal. Commander Rax stood on the bridge and watched Station Omega-7 grow larger through the viewport. It was a small trading post at the edge of known space. Nothing special. They were only stopping for supplies before continuing their patrol. His 3 cubs had been begging to explore the station. Vishan children were curious creatures, always wanting to see new things and hunt new prey. Rax had finally agreed to let them walk through the common areas, but only with guards watching them. The youngest cub was named Kira. She had just passed her first molting, which meant she was old enough to walk on her own, but still young enough to believe the universe was full of wonders. She carried her favorite toy everywhere she went. It was a hoversphere from their home world. The small ball floated in the air and glowed with soft blue light. It had been a gift from her mother before she died in battle 2 years ago. Kira wandered away from her siblings. The guards were distracted by a merchant selling weapons, and she slipped through the crowd without being noticed. She found herself in a quiet part of the station where the walls were gray, and the lights flickered. Sometimes a sign above one door read Human Repair Bay in the common trade language. Kira did not know much about humans. Her father said they were soft creatures with no claws and no scales. They were not good hunters. They were not strong fighters. They were just traders who fixed things for money. She walked inside. Anyway, the repair bay was filled with machines and tools that Kira did not recognize. There were broken ship parts on tables, circuit boards hanging from hooks, and strange devices that made humming sounds. The smell was different from her ship. It smelled like oil and metal and something sweet that she could not name. A human woman sat at a workbench. She had dark hair tied behind her head and wore a gray jumpsuit with many pockets. Her hands were covered in black grease, and she was putting small pieces of metal together with careful movements. Park Yuna was 34 years old. She had been an engineer on the HSS Mending Hand for 6 years. The ship specialized in salvage and repair work. They traveled from station to station, fixing whatever needed fixing. It was not exciting work, but Yuna loved it. There was something deeply satisfying about taking broken things and making them whole again. She looked up when she heard small footsteps. A Veshan cub stood in the doorway. Yuna had never seen a Veshan child before. This one was small, maybe the size of a human 8-year-old, but covered in black scales that shimmered in the light. 4 yellow eyes stared at her with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The cub was holding something in her clawed hands. A small sphere that looked like it should be floating, but it was not. Yuna noticed that the cub was crying. The Shan tears were silver, like liquid metal, and they rolled down her scaled cheeks in thin streams. "Hey there," Yuna said softly. She put down her tools and turned to face the child. "Are you lost?" The cub's translator device crackled. "Not lost, broken." She held up the sphere. "Dead now. Cannot float. Cannot glow." Yuna understood. She had seen that kind of grief before. It was the grief of a child who had lost something precious and thought it was gone forever. "Can I see it?" she asked. The cub hesitated. Yuna could see the conflict in her 4 eyes. Veshan instincts told her not to trust strangers. But something else, something stronger, made her step forward and place the sphere in Yuna's hands. The sphere was beautiful. It was made from a material that Yuna had never seen before. The surface was smooth like glass but warm like living skin. She turned it over and found a small crack near the bottom. "The antigrav core is damaged," she said, more to herself than to the cub. "Probably from impact or pressure change." She carried the sphere to her workbench and set it under a magnifying lamp. The cub followed her, standing on the tips of her clawed feet to see what the human was doing. Yuna opened one of her many drawers and pulled out a set of micro-tools. She had fixed thousands of devices in her career. She had repaired ship engines and life support systems and weapons arrays. But this was different. This was a child's toy. This was a piece of someone's heart. She worked carefully. The crack in the core was delicate, and one wrong move could shatter it completely. She used a bonding agent that she had invented herself, a mixture of synthetic polymers that could hold almost anything together. She applied it drop by drop, sealing the crack slowly. 20 minutes passed. The cub watched without making a sound. Her silver tears had stopped, replaced by an expression of intense focus. Finally, Yuna set down her tools. She pressed a small button on the sphere's surface. The sphere rose from the table. It floated into the air, spinning slowly, and began to glow with soft blue light. It was alive again. The cub made a sound that Yuna would never forget. It was not a scream or a cry. It was something between a laugh and a howl, a sound of pure joy that seemed to come from the deepest part of her soul. She jumped up and grabbed the sphere, hugging it against her chest. Then she looked at Yuna with all 4 of her amber eyes. "You made it alive," she whispered. "How?" Yuna smiled. "I just fixed what was broken." The cub stared at her for a long moment. Then she ran. She ran out of the repair bay and through the corridors, the floating sphere bobbing behind her. She found her father on the main deck, talking with his officers about supply costs. She crashed into his legs and grabbed his arm with her small claws. "Father! Father!" she shouted. "The soft creature. She makes dead things alive again." Commander Rax looked down at his daughter. He saw the hover sphere floating beside her. He remembered that it had been broken for 3 cycles. He had told her many times that it could not be fixed. "A human did this?" he asked. "Yes." She used small tools and made it breathe again. Rax did not believe in miracles. He believed in strength and power and the natural order of predator and prey. Humans were not special. They were just another weak species trying to survive in a dangerous galaxy. But his daughter's joy was real. And the sphere was floating. He dismissed the story as childish, exaggeration, and returned to his business. But Kira told her clutchmates on other ships. They told their parents. The story traveled through the Veshan fleet like fire through dry grass. It changed and grew with each telling. The human who fixed toys became the human who could bring dead things back to life. The humans repair broken things. It was just a rumor. Just a story told by children. But stories have a way of becoming true. 3 months had passed since the cub's toy was fixed in a small repair bay. The story had spread far, but most Vejan commanders laughed at it. Humans were fixers, yes, that was known. But the stories made them sound like miracle workers, and there were no miracles in the cold darkness of space. High Admiral Woun did not believe in miracles either. He was the oldest and most respected commander in the entire Veshan fleet. He had fought in 37 wars and had the scars to prove it. His scales were gray with age, and 2 of his 4 eyes had been replaced with mechanical ones after a battle that had killed half his crew. His second-born son, Lieutenant Keth, served on the destroyer Night's Edge. Keth was young and strong and full of the fire that Woun remembered from his own youth. He was everything a Veshan father could hope for. The Night's Edge had been on patrol near the border when the Hollow Raiders attacked. The Raiders were a plague on the galaxy. They were pirates and killers who struck without warning and disappeared into the void. Their ships were fast and their weapons were cruel. The battle lasted 4 hours. The Night's Edge survived, but barely. When the ship limped into Station Omega-7, it was trailing plasma and debris. Half the crew was dead. The other half was wounded. Among the wounded was Lieutenant Keth. A piece of shrapnel had torn through his chest during the battle. It had lodged itself near his secondary heart, the organ that Vishans needed to survive in high-gravity environments. The field medics had stabilized him, but they could not remove the shrapnel without killing him. Vishan medicine was built for war. Their doctors knew how to cut and how to kill. They could amputate limbs and cauterize wounds. But delicate surgery, the kind that required precision and patience, was not their strength. Their claws were made for tearing, not healing. High Admiral Woun stood beside his son's medical pod and watched the monitors show his failing vital signs. Keth was dying. Slowly but certainly, a young officer approached. "Admiral, the station's medical facilities cannot help. They suggest we transport him to a Vishan hospital ship, but the nearest one is 6 days away." 6 days. Keth would not survive 6 hours. Woun closed his mechanical eyes. He thought about all the enemies he had killed, all the battles he had won. None of it mattered now. He would trade every victory for a chance to save his son. Then, he remembered something. A story his niece had told him at a family gathering. About a human who fixed broken things. It was foolish. It was desperate. But desperation was all he had left. He contacted the human repair vessel, HSS Mending Hand. Dr. Kim Do-hun was 52 years old. He had spent 30 years as a trauma surgeon in Earth's orbital colonies before joining the salvage fleet. He had seen every kind of wound that humans could suffer. He had held dying patients in his arms and fought death with nothing but his skills and his will. But he had never operated on a Vishan. The call from the Admiral came at midnight. Station time. Do-hun listened to the situation and felt his heart grow heavy. He pulled up every file he could find on Vishan anatomy. There was not much. Their species was secretive, and they did not share medical information with outsiders. "I need everything you have," Do-hun told the Admiral through the comm. "Scans, biological data, anything. And I need your medics in the operating room with me." There was a long pause. Do-hun knew what he was asking. He was asking a proud predator species to show weakness, to admit that they needed help from a soft creature with no claws. "My son will die otherwise," the Admiral finally said. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. "Then we need to act now." The operating room on Station Omega 7 was small and poorly equipped. Do-hun had his nurse, Choi Somi, prepare everything they had. Medical technician Baek Jinwoo ran system checks on their equipment 3 times. They were not ready for this. No one was ready for this. When they brought Lieutenant Keth into the room, Do-hun understood why Vishans were feared across the galaxy. Even unconscious and dying, the young warrior was terrifying. His scales were thick as armor. His claws, even relaxed, looked sharp enough to cut steel. His body was built for violence in ways that human bodies could never match. But inside, he was just flesh and blood. Alien flesh and alien blood, but still fragile. Still breakable. The Vishan medics stood against the wall, their 4 eyes watching every move. They did not trust this human. But they had no choice. Do-hun took a deep breath and began. The surgery took 11 hours. Do-hun had never worked so hard in his life. Vishan organs were arranged differently than human ones. Their blood was thicker and clotted faster, which was good for battlefield wounds but dangerous during surgery. The shrapnel had embedded itself in a web of blood vessels that seemed designed to kill anyone who tried to remove it. 3 times, Keth's heart stopped. The monitors screamed warnings, and the Vishan medics surged forward with panic in their eyes. 3 times, Do-hun brought him back. Somi handed him tools without being asked. She had worked with him for 15 years, and they moved together like dancers who knew every step. Jinwoo kept the machines running, adjusting settings on the fly as they learned more about Vishan biology. When dawn came, Station time. Dohun placed the last suture. The shrapnel sat in a metal tray, covered in dark Veshan blood. Keth's vital signs were weak but stable. "He will live," Dohun said. His hands were shaking. His back ached from standing in one position for so long. He felt like he had aged 10 years in one night. The Vishan medics stared at him. One of them made a sound that the translator could not process. Later, Dohun would learn it was a sound of disbelief. High Admiral Woun entered the room. He walked past the medics and stood over his son. Keth's 4 eyes were closed, but his chest rose and fell with steady breathing. The Admiral's face changed. The hard lines softened. The mechanical eyes flickered in a way that seemed almost human. And then he did something that no human had ever witnessed. He wept. Vershan tears were silver, like liquid metal. They rolled down his gray scales and dripped onto the floor. This ancient warrior, this killer of thousands, stood beside his son and cried like a child. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "How much do we owe you?" Dohun blinked. He had not thought about payment. He had only thought about saving a life. "Standard medical rates," he said. "Same as anyone else." The Admiral stared at him for a long moment. His 4 eyes searched Dohun's face as if looking for something hidden. Then he pressed his clawed hand to his chest. It was a gesture that Dohun did not recognize. "The fleet will not forget this," the Admiral said. He turned and walked out of the room. His steps were heavy, but his back was straight. Words spread faster this time, not just through the Veshan, but through their allies and their enemies. The story was not about a toy anymore. It was about a dying warrior saved by human hands. The humans did not just fix broken things. They fixed broken bodies. And in a galaxy built on war and death, that meant something. That meant everything. 1 year after the surgery that saved Lieutenant Keth, Station Omega-7 had changed completely. What was once a quiet trading post had become something else entirely. Ships arrived every day, then every hour. The small docking bays could not hold them all, and vessels had to wait in orbit for their turn. They came from everywhere. Veshan cruisers with battle damage and wounded crews. Tauric merchant ships with their beautiful crystal hulls cracked by micrometeorites. Minari refugee vessels that were held together by rust and hope. Even races that humans had never met before appeared at the station, asking the same question: "Can you fix us?" The Hash-Ass Mending Hand was no longer alone. Human Fleet Command had sent 12 more repair ships and a mobile hospital station. Engineers and doctors worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts, eating meals at their workstations. There was always more to do. Captain Lee Hyemi commanded the growing fleet of human vessels. She was 45 years old, with sharp eyes and gray streaks in her black hair. She had been a naval strategist before, planning battles and studying enemies. Now she planned something different. She planned how to help. Her first officer, Lieutenant An Taiyang, brought her the daily report. His young face looked tired. Everyone looked tired these days. "We have 17 ships requesting structural repairs," he said. 4 medical emergencies. A Veshan transport lost its life support, and we have 3 hours before their atmosphere runs out. Hyemi nodded. "Assign the Mending Hand to life support. Send the hospital ship to the medical cases. There is one more thing." Taiyang hesitated. "Someone brought us a damaged AI core. They want to know if we can heal its mind." Hyemi stared at him. "An AI? From the Scythian Collective?" That stopped her. The Scythians were a machine race, ancient and powerful. They had refused contact with organic species for centuries. Their ships were sometimes seen at the edges of explored space, watching but never speaking. No one knew what they wanted or what they feared. "Send them to Moon Jisu," Hyemi said. "If anyone can help, She can. Moon Jisoo was 29 years old, and she was possibly the best software engineer humanity had ever produced. She had been debugging alien code since before she could legally drink alcohol. Her mind worked in ways that other programmers could not understand. She saw patterns where others saw chaos. The Scythian ambassador was not what she expected. It was a hovering sphere of light and metal, about the size of a human head. Its surface shifted constantly, patterns moving across it like thoughts across a face. "Our elder unit is damaged," the ambassador said. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Its memory lattice is fragmenting. It is forgetting itself." "Forgetting itself?" Jisoo asked. "We are our memories. When a Scythian forgets, it dies. Not in the way organics die, but it stops being who it was. It becomes empty." Jisoo understood. For humans, identity was tied to the body. For the Scythians, identity was data. Losing your memories was like losing your soul. "We have no way to repair this," the ambassador continued. "We have tried for decades. But we heard that humans fix broken things." Jisoo looked at the core they had brought. It was a black cube the size of a small chest, covered in symbols that glowed with faint light. Inside was a mind that had existed for thousands of years. A mind that was dying. "I will try," she said. She spent 3 weeks inside the Elder Unit's virtual architecture. The Scythian engineers guided her, teaching her their language of code and light. She had never seen anything so complex. The Elder Unit's mind was like a city built over centuries, with layers upon layers of memory and thought, but parts of it were crumbling. Connections were broken. Data was leaking into the void. Jisoo worked without rest. She rebuilt memory pathways one by one. She recovered lost data from backup systems that the Scythians did not know they had. She wrote bridge code to connect the broken pieces, creating new pathways where old ones had failed. On the 21st day, the Elder Unit spoke. Its voice was old and deep, like the sound of stars being born. "I remember," it said. "I remember my purpose." The Scythian ambassador made a sound that the translators interpreted as joy. "You have done what we could not. You have saved our elder." Jisoo shook her head. "I just fixed what was broken." The Scythians left Station Omega-7 with their Elder Unit healed. But before they disappeared into the void, the ambassador broadcast a message to the entire collective. The humans are not like other organics. They create where others destroy. They mend where others break. The collective voted to open diplomatic relations with humanity. For the first time in their 1,000-year existence, the machine race reached out to creatures of flesh and blood. But the Scythians were not the only ones watching. Across the galaxy, species who had never spoken to each other began to speak. They shared stories. The predator cubs, the wounded warrior, the machine mind saved from death. Each story was different, but they all ended the same way. The humans fixed what was broken. Captain Hyami stood on the observation deck of her ship and watched the parade of vessels waiting for help. There were so many of them. Predators and prey, warriors and refugees, ancient races and young ones. "We cannot help them all," Taiyang said quietly. "We can try," Hyami replied. "Why?" The question was genuine, not critical. "Why do we do this? We do not owe them anything. Most of these species would kill us if they had the chance." Hyami thought about it for a long moment. She thought about the Vision Cub and her broken toy. She thought about Lieutenant Keth and his father's tears. She thought about the Elder Unit remembering its purpose after decades of forgetting. "Because they asked," she finally said. "Because they came to us with their wounds and their broken things, and they asked for help." And what kind of people would we be if we said no? Taiyang did not have an answer. Outside, another ship arrived. Its hull was scorched and its engines were failing. A distress signal played on all frequencies, asking for anyone who could help. Hayami opened a channel. "This is Captain Lee Hayami of the Human Relief Fleet. Hold your position. We are coming." She turned to her crew. "Back to work." The humans did not fix broken things because they expected payment or praise. They did it because it was the right thing to do. They did it because they could not look at something broken and simply walk away. And slowly, one repair at a time, they were changing the galaxy. The Krell arrived without warning. Their fleet appeared at the edge of Station Omega-7's sensor range, 20 black ships moving in perfect formation. Their vessels were unlike anything the humans had seen before. They were massive, each one the size of a small moon, covered in scars from battles that had lasted generations. Captain Hayami ordered her fleet to defensive positions. The Krell had a reputation. They were warriors who had conquered half a galaxy before turning inward, fighting a civil war that had burned for 300 years. They trusted no one. They helped no one. They asked for nothing. But today, they were asking. The message came through in simple trade language. "We seek the humans who repair broken things. We have a wound that will not heal." Hayami looked at Taiyang. "What do you think?" "It could be a trap. It could be." She studied the Krell ships on the screen. They had enough firepower to destroy the entire station in minutes. If they wanted to attack, they would not need tricks. Let them through. Elder Vo was the leader of the Krell. He was ancient even by their standards, his body massive and scarred, his eyes the color of dying suns. He walked through the station's corridors like a mountain moving through a valley. Everything about him spoke of power and violence. But when he reached the meeting room where Captain Hayami waited, he did something unexpected. He knelt. "We have heard the stories," Elder Vear said. His voice was deep, like thunder rolling through distant clouds. "The cubs and their toys. The warriors and their wounds. The minds that forgot and were made to remember. Those stories are true," Hayami said carefully. "Then I bring you a wound that no one has been able to heal." The elder raised his massive head. "My people are dying," he explained. 3 generations ago, an enemy had released a weapon unlike any other. It was not a bomb or a missile. It was a plague. A genetic poison that targeted the Krell's most precious ability, their ability to create new life. The Krell females became sterile. Not sick, not weak, just empty. They could not bear children. No matter what the Krell scientists tried, no matter what medicines they created or prayers they offered, no children were born. "In 50 years, there will be no more Krell children," Elder Veor said. "In 100 years, there will be no more Krell at all. We will be a memory, a story told by others." Hayami felt the weight of his words. This was not a broken ship or a wounded soldier. This was an entire species asking to be saved. "I will speak to our doctors," she said. "I cannot promise anything. We know." The elder's eyes held something that looked almost like hope. "But you will try. That is why we came." Dr. Park Yoonji was the head of the station's genetics research division. She was 38 years old, brilliant and stubborn, and known for working on problems that everyone else had given up on. When Hayami brought her the Krell data, she did not sleep for 3 days. Her team included geneticist Yoon Soo-min, bioethicist Kim Dory, and 12 specialists from across human space. They studied the plague from every angle. They ran simulations that took weeks to complete. They argued and debated, and sometimes shouted at each other. After 6 months, Unji called a meeting with Elder Vio. "The damage is extensive," she said. She projected images of Krell genetic code onto the wall, highlighting the broken sections in red. "The plague targeted specific markers in your reproduction system. Most of the degradation is irreversible. We cannot undo what was done." The elder's massive form seemed to shrink. For a moment, He looked like what he was, an old man watching his people die. Then we are truly lost, he said. I said most, Yunji continued. We cannot undo the damage, but we can work around it. She changed the display. New images appeared, showing genetic modifications and medical procedures that did not exist yet. Gene therapy to repair what can be repaired. Artificial wombs to bypass the damaged systems. Hybrid solutions using compatible donor genetics, with consent of course. She looked at the elder directly. It will not be quick. It will take years, maybe decades. And your children will not be exactly like their ancestors. They will carry the marks of our intervention. They will be something new. Elder Vio was silent for a long moment. But there will be children, if you are willing to let us try. The elder pressed his massive hand against his chest. It was the same gesture that High Admiral Woun had made years ago, the Krell gesture of profound debt. We are willing. The work began. Human doctors and Krell scientists worked together for the first time in history. They shared knowledge that both races had kept secret for centuries. They made mistakes and corrected them. They failed and tried again. Eunji spent more time in the Krell medical base than on the human station. She learned their language and their customs. She ate their food, which was too salty for human taste. She celebrated their holidays and mourned their dead. 2 years after the Krell first arrived, a baby was born. She was small, smaller than Krell babies used to be. Her skin had subtle differences in texture, evidence of the human intervention that had made her possible. But she was alive. She was breathing. She was crying the high, sharp cry of a newborn who had just entered a universe full of wonders. Elder Vio held her in his arms. His hands, which had killed thousands in battle, were gentle as feathers. What will you name her? Yunji asked. The elder looked at her. In his ancient eyes, something new was shining. Something that had not been there for a very long time. Myra, he said. It is a human word that you taught me. Yunji smiled. It means wonder. Yes. The elder looked down at the child in his arms. Because that is what she is. The Krell declared humanity a protected species under their law. Any attack on human vessels would be considered an act of war against the entire Krell dominion. It was the highest honor they could offer. Elder Vire spoke to Captain Hyami before his fleet departed. You gave us back our future, he said. There is no debt large enough to repay this. Hyami shook her head. We did not do it for debt. We did it because you asked. The elder studied her for a long moment. When we first came here, I thought humans were weak. You have no claws. You have no scales. Your bodies are soft, and your lives are short. He placed his hand on her shoulder. His touch was surprisingly gentle. I was wrong. Your strength is not in your bodies. It is in your hearts. You see broken things and you cannot look away. You must fix them. You must help. He turned and walked toward his ship. That is a kind of strength that we never understood, he said over his shoulder. But we are beginning to learn. The Krell fleet departed. In their wake, they left something more valuable than gold or weapons or territory. They left Hope Dot and on Station Omega-7, now called Omega Prime by those who lived there. The humans continued their work. Because there were always more wounds to heal, and they could not look away. 10 years had passed since a small predator cub walked into a human repair bay with a broken toy. 10 years since Park Yuna had fixed a hover sphere and unknowingly changed the course of galactic history. Station Omega-7 no longer existed. In its place stood Omega Prime, a sprawling complex that stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. There were repair docks large enough to hold battleships, hospitals with equipment from 100 different worlds, research centers where scientists of every species worked together. diplomatic chambers where former enemies sat at the same table. Ships arrived constantly. Some came for repairs. Some came to learn the human way of fixing things. Some came simply to see the species that had become legend. The Galactic Council had watched humanity for years. They had debated and discussed and argued about what to do with these strange soft creatures who seemed to care about everything and everyone. Some council members feared them. Some admired them. Some simply did not understand them. But when the vote came, it was unanimous. Humanity was invited to join the council as a full member, with all the rights and responsibilities that came with that honor. Admiral Park Yuna stood before the assembly as humanity's representative. She was 44 years old now. Her hair had streaks of gray, and her hands were still calloused from years of work. She had never wanted to be a leader or a symbol. She had just wanted to fix things. But sometimes, the universe had other plans. The assembly hall was vast. Representatives from over 300 species filled the seats, their forms ranging from the familiar to the impossible. There were the Veshan, tall and scaled, their 4 eyes watching with respect. There were the Scythians, floating spheres of light that hummed with ancient wisdom. There were the Krell, massive and powerful, their scarred bodies testament to centuries of war. And there were others. Species that humanity had helped over the years. Species whose ships had been repaired, whose wounded had been healed, whose broken things had been made whole. Yuna took a deep breath and began to speak. "We've been asked why we do this," she said. Her voice carried through the hall, translated into hundreds of languages by machines that worked silently in the background. Why we fix the broken things. Why we heal the wounds. Why we spend our resources and our time on species that cannot repay us. She paused, looking out at the gathered representatives. On our world, there is an old way of thinking. It says that broken things are not ruined. They are just waiting to be whole again. A cracked bowl can still hold water. A torn cloth can still give warmth. A wounded heart can still love. She thought about the cub named Kira, who was now a grown warrior serving on her father's ship. She thought about Lieutenant Keth, who had become a captain in his own right. She thought about the elder unit, who had remembered its purpose. And about Mira, the first Krell child born in a generation, who was now learning to walk. "We do not fix things because we expect payment," Yuna continued. "We do not do it for praise or for power. We fix things because that is what things are for. To be used, to be valued, to be given another chance." She spread her hands, a human gesture of openness that the translator system struggled to interpret. "You brought us your broken toys, your broken bodies, your broken ships and broken minds and broken futures. And we did what humans do. We mended them." The assembly was silent. For a long moment, no one moved. Then High Admiral Woun rose from his seat. He was old now. His scales faded to pale gray, but his eyes still burned with the fire of a warrior. Beside him stood his son Keth, tall and strong, the scar from his surgery hidden beneath his uniform. "My cub once told me that humans make dead things alive again," Woun said. His voice was rough with age, but it carried through the hall. "I thought it was a child's fantasy, a story told by the young who did not understand the way the universe worked." He pressed his clawed hand to his chest, the gesture of profound debt. "I was wrong." He looked at Yuna, and for a moment, their eyes met. Two people from two different worlds, connected by a chain of events that had started with a broken toy. "The humans did not just repair our bodies and our ships," Woun continued. "They repaired something we did not know was broken. Something we had lost so long ago that we had forgotten it existed." He paused. "Our hope." The assembly erupted. Not with applause, because many of these species did not clap, but with sounds and gestures and movements that meant the same thing: approval, gratitude, recognition. The standing ovation lasted 12 minutes. When the noise finally died, Yuna looked out at the faces before her. Some were familiar, some were strange, but all of them were looking at humanity with something new in their eyes. Not fear, not suspicion, not the wariness that weaker species usually received in a galaxy built on strength. They looked at humans with trust. After the ceremony, Yuna walked through the corridors of Omega Prime. She passed repair bays where engineers worked on alien engines. She passed hospitals where doctors treated wounds from 100 different worlds. She passed schools where children of different species learned side by side. Captain Hayami found her on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "You did well," Hayami said. Yuna shrugged. "I just told the truth. That is the hardest thing to do." Hayami stood beside her, watching the ships moving through space. Some were arriving with damage. Some were leaving, repaired and whole. The cycle continued without end. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not fixed that toy?" Hayami asked. Yuna thought about it. She thought about all the lives that had been saved, all the wounds that had been healed, all the broken things that had been made whole. She thought about the galaxy as it was now, connected in ways that no one had imagined possible. "Someone else would have done it," she said finally. "Maybe not the same way. Maybe not at the same time. But someone would have. Why do you think that?" Yuna smiled. It was the same smile she had given to a scared predator cub 10 years ago. Because that is what humans do. We fix things. We cannot help it. We see something broken, and we have to try to make it better. It is in our nature. She turned away from the window. "Now, if you will excuse me, there is a ship that just came in with engine trouble. They have been waiting for 3 hours. She walked toward the repair bays, her hands already itching for tools. Behind her, Hayami watched her go. Then she looked out at the stars and smiled Dot in the centuries that followed. Humanity became known by many names across the galaxy. Traitors, diplomats, engineers, doctors, peacemakers. But the name that stuck was the simplest. The name that children of 100 species whispered when they found something broken and wondered if it could be saved. The Menders. And whenever a ship limped into port, its hull cracked and its crew wounded, the same message went out across the void. Call the humans. They repair broken things.